Imagine an 8-year-old girl facing court to defend her father from the injustice he suffered with a simple drawing and honest words that even moved the judge. This story shows how love and truth can change everything. The day the police knocked on Arthur's father's door was the beginning of a nightmare. He was a simple, hard-working man who spent most of his time working hard to provide a decent life for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. He worked as a construction worker, leaving early in the morning and returning late, always tired, but smiling when he saw his daughter running towards him to hug him. He was everything to Lily, and she was everything to him. But that morning, everything changed. 2 policemen appeared in the modest house they lived in and announced that Arthur was under arrest, charged with a crime he didn't even understand. He was handcuffed in front of Lily's terrified eyes. The little girl tightly grabbed the hem of her father's shirt, trying to stop him from leaving. Her heart was beating fast, and tears were streaming down her cheeks uncontrollably. "Dad, where are they taking you?" Arthur tried to smile, but his voice betrayed him. "Everything will be okay, my love. I promise you that." But the truth is, he had no control over what was happening. There was no tangible evidence, only suspicions and preconceptions. He was taken to the police station simply because someone had committed a robbery in the area. Witnesses described the perpetrator as a black man wearing a gray shirt. That was enough for Arthur to be arrested without having the chance to defend himself or prove his innocence. The news spread quickly in the newspapers and social media. It wasn't that he was a wrongly accused man. They wrote, "A robbery suspect has been arrested." Society had already made its judgment before the court even convened. For many, Arthur was guilty simply because he fit the general description of a criminal. Meanwhile, Lily refused to believe that her father would stay away from her. Despite her young age, she understood that something was wrong. Her father wasn't a criminal. He would never hurt anyone. So why didn't anyone want to hear that? On the day of the first hearing, Lily was in the front row, looking at her father with hopeful eyes. The courtroom was filled with people who had never seen him before, but were judging him based on what they thought they knew. The prosecution spoke, and to them, Arthur was a danger to society. They didn't mention that he was a loving, hard-working man who had never had any trouble with the law. No, to them, he was just a suspect, and that was enough. Lily clenched her small hands. If the adults couldn't see the truth, it was time for someone unexpected to speak up, and that was her. Lily looked around the courtroom, her chest tightening. The serious faces, the cold stares, and the harsh words from the prosecutor were forming a wall between her and the truth. The man she loved, her hero, was sitting there, handcuffed like a criminal, but she knew her father was innocent. The defense attorney tried his best, but no one seemed to want to listen. The prosecutor insisted that Arthur fit the description of the criminal. A black man wearing a gray shirt was near the crime scene, he said, and that was indisputable evidence. It didn't matter that Arthur was in another neighborhood at the time of the crime, working on a construction site. It didn't matter that none of the stolen items were found on him. For many, just the fact that he was sitting there in the dock meant he was guilty. Lily was gripping the hem of her dress tightly, trying to suppress her anger and fear. This wasn't fair. How could they judge her father without knowing his story? He was a man who tickled her every night before bed, who worked under blazing sun to secure her future, who never left the house without planting a kiss on her forehead and saying, "Daddy loves you." She looked at the judge, expecting to see some mercy, some hesitation, but he kept his expression closed, just listening to the arguments that were coming from all sides. At that moment, something changed inside her. Lily realized that no one here knew the real Arthur. No one knew about his kind heart, about his tired smile when he came home from work, about the stories he used to tell her before bed. All they could see was a black man sitting in the dock. She swallowed hard. If adults can't see the truth, maybe it's time for a child to make them see it. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. All eyes were on the prosecutor, who continued to present his arguments as if Arthur's conviction was a foregone conclusion. But suddenly, a soft, steady voice broke the tense atmosphere. "Can I speak?" The whole room turned to see where the voice was coming from. It was little Lily. Her eyes sparkled with emotion. She rose from the seat she was sitting in and looked directly at the judge. "Who are you, my little one?" The judge asked in surprise. I am Lily, my father's daughter. Arthur's heart sank. He never wanted his daughter to go through this. He didn't want her to see him in chains, being treated like a criminal. But here was his little girl, standing in the middle of a courtroom full of adults, defending him. The prosecutor tried to interrupt. Your Honor, this witness is not on the list. But the judge held up his hand for silence. He looked at Lily curiously, his eyes alight with emotion. Speak, Lily. What do you want to say? She took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding, but she couldn't back down. She looked around at all the people judging her father, without even knowing him. Then she took a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. It was a drawing. She held the paper with both hands and walked over to the judge. This is my father, she said, showing the drawing. There was a man holding the hand of a little girl, and they were both smiling. My father takes me to school every day before he goes to work. He teaches me to tell the truth. He always lets me sleep when I have nightmares. He would never hurt anyone. Silence fell in the courtroom. Some people turned their gaze away, feeling ashamed. Even the judge looked as if he swallowed hard. If my father had been a bad person, she said, her voice trembling, my heart would know that, but only he knows how to love. Arthur couldn't hold back his tears. Here was his daughter, right in front of everyone, showing more courage and truth than any defense he could offer. The judge was speechless for a moment, then something changed in his gaze. For the first time, it seemed that someone there saw Arthur not as a suspect, but as a man, a human being. The impact of those words was profound, but the question remained, would it be enough to change the course of this trial? The courtroom remained silent for a few seconds. No one expected that an 8-year-old girl would be able to touch the hearts of those present so deeply. The judge looked at Lily, and for a fleeting glance, his eyes reflected something different. He doubted that perhaps, for the first time in this trial, someone was seeing Arthur beyond the accusations. The prosecutor, who was still trying to control the situation, cleared his throat and tried to divert attention. Your Honor, we are dealing with a child. This cannot be considered valid testimony. But the judge raised his hand again. The prosecutor held his tongue. Sometimes, Mr. Prosecutor, the purest words come from where we least expect them. The judge glanced back at Lily, who was still holding her drawing tightly. Tell me, my little one, why do you think your father wouldn't do what they say? Lily took a deep breath. She knew that moment was important. Because my father taught me that lying was wrong. He taught me that we should work hard to earn things, not take them from others. He would never have allowed me to do something bad. How could he then do something like this? The judge leaned back in his chair, thinking that girl reminded him of his own daughter years ago when she was little. Seeing her, he looked at Arthur, who was keeping his head down, his eyes filled with tears. That wasn't the look of a criminal. It was the look of a father helpless in the face of injustice. Arthur's lawyer took the moment to speak. Your Honor, I ask that you reconsider the evidence. You saw this girl speak from her heart. But in addition, we have witnesses who can confirm that Arthur was elsewhere at the time of the crime. He was only accused based on a general description without any concrete evidence. The judge looked at the prosecutor, who looked upset. What do we have against the accused other than the description? The prosecutor flipped through his papers, and for a few moments, he seemed hesitant. There were no fingerprints, no cameras, no stolen items. Just a testimony of someone who said he saw a black man wearing a gray shirt. The judge took a deep breath and said something that made Lily's heart race. Based on what was presented, I request that the evidence be reevaluated before any final decision is made. Lily smiled. Everyone in the hall muttered. Something inside her told her that the truth was finally beginning to emerge. The courtroom was silent. It was a different silence, no longer the weight of inevitable conviction, but a pause where all realized that something needed to be reviewed. The judge looked at Arthur, then at Lily, and finally turned to the prosecutors and lawyers. I want to redo this investigation with more care. His voice was firm but laden with emotion. You can't destroy a man's life based on mere assumptions. The room exploded with whispers. The prosecutor was clearly confused. He shuffled through papers, but he couldn't respond. In the end, there was no concrete evidence against Arthur, only a verdict based on the color of his skin and the rush to find a guilty party. Meanwhile, his defense attorney moved quickly. As the case was reopened, new witnesses were heard. The construction workers where Arthur worked on the day of the crime confirmed that he was at work at the time of the incident. Furthermore, a deeper analysis of the security camera footage revealed a crucial detail. The real perpetrator had a tattoo on his arm, something Arthur had never had. After ending with the presentation of new evidence, the judge made the final decision. Arthur da Silva is innocent of all charges. The court apologizes for the mistake that occurred. Those words made the world stop for a moment. Lily opened her eyes wide, and in seconds, she was running across the courtroom without caring who was looking. She threw herself into the arms of her father, who was finally free. Without restrictions, no looks of condemnation, only tears in his eyes and a smile of relief. "I told you, Dad. I knew they would believe you." Arthur grabbed his daughter's face, moved. "It was you, my little one. You were the one who made them see." From across the room, the judge witnessed the scene. For the first time in a long time, he felt that justice had indeed been done, but not because of laws or lawyers' arguments. It was because of an 8-year-old girl who needed nothing but the truth and love to open everyone's eyes. When Arthur left the courtroom, now a free man, he was holding Lily in his arms. It wasn't just a happy ending for them. It was a lesson for everyone who was there that day. Because true justice shouldn't depend on appearance or bias, but on the facts and sometimes on the heart of a pure child.